Hi, I'm Jennifer Potter, Executive Director of Be Well Texas. Too many people are struggling alone these days, and alcohol and drug deaths are increasing. We started Be Well Texas to offer high-quality, science-based addiction treatment and recovery services anywhere, virtually or in person. In many cases, there is no cost for treatment or medications if you don't have insurance. Really. Welcome to Be Well Texas. We're glad you're here. Visit bewelltexas.org.
Oh, welcome into the Gamblin Gauchos. I'm Ryan Mainville. He's Kyle Jacobson. He is a mobile Rob Bro. Hope you boys had a happy holidays. Hope all our listeners had a Merry Christmas and are looking forward to the new year coming up this week. Got a little sewed for you to carry you over through this awkward time in between Christmas and New Year's. A bunch of Mickey Mouse work days, but if you're still grinding in the office like a real one, like I'm sure Kyle is, and like I am, and Rob too, here will be some good cubicle listening for you today on the show, on the Barnett, Howard, and Williams rundown. We've got Liberty Bowl recap. Going to be a bummer to talk through that one, but is what it is. Some end of the season thoughts, and then of course the Matador Transit mailbag. Kyle, if I was hypothetically a football player and I was in a defenseless position laying on the turf and somebody decided to intentionally step on my ankle and I wanted to perhaps pursue criminal charges against them, who would you call for me?
I would call our friends over at Barnett, Howard, and Williams. And, when doing these ad reads, we concoct some pretty insane legal scenarios, but I think that they actually do case law where, like, if you get hurt while you're at work, which I don't know if we have many professional football players who listen to this, but the equivalent of whatever industry you're in, if somebody proverbially stomps on your proverbial ankle, call our friends over at Barnett, Howard, and Williams. They will get justice for you. 3 double Texas Tech grads. They're based in Fort Worth, but they do cases all across the state of Texas. BHWlawfirm.com if you would like to learn more. They do other kinds of criminal defense, other types of law as well. But if you get hurt on the job, that is one of their areas of expertise. So I don't know enough about the law. I think that if what I learned in my one intro to law class in high school is that something like a football or basketball game, because it's like inherently physical, the threshold for like a crime in that kind of setting is a lot higher. But I don't know, maybe Baskerville has like a civil case if that was a serious injury and it hurt his ability to earn future income. I don't know. We'll let the lawyers and judges decide, but hopefully he calls their friends over at Barnett, Howard, and Williams if he wants to present a case like that.
Speaking of ankles, Liberty Bowl, 2 days post-Christmas in Memphis. Weird game is kind of my initial thoughts from it going into the game. I felt pretty good about Tech's chances. Arkansas being down a ton of guys due to the portal. Obviously, Taj Brooks was kind of a coin flip, which I'm skeptical about how real that was throughout the weeks leading up to the game. No Josh Kelly was obviously a big part of your absentees as well. But really thought you were in a position to kind of at least compete and play a close game against this Arkansas team, if not win. First quarter kind of set the tone for the game and put you in a hole that you could not climb out of. I think you were down 21-3 after the first frame. A lot of explosive plays allowed defensively. I was kind of interested in the play calling on both sides of the ball. Obviously, defensively, not much you can do. I think it was really an enigma of what the defense has been all year, just kind of highlighted at points. You gave up a generational game defensively to Taylon Green, who had one of the craziest stat lines that I can remember. We can go more granular into the details of the game, but Kyle, initial takeaways, thoughts from the Liberty Bowl?
Well, I'll kind of repeat what I said on Patreon for our parlay picadors. This is not. It'll come across as like post game cope, but the facts of the matter are you were not just without QB1, RB1, and wide receiver one. Your replacement at quarterback was a true freshman, first time starter. Your RB1 that you were without is the literal leading rusher in program history. Wide receiver one is the first guy to eclipse 1,000 yards since 2018. So everybody in bowl season is dealing with opt outs and portal stuff. I'd be a little surprised if at those three very important skill spots anybody in the country was missing the same magnitude of experience and production at QB1, RB1, wide receiver one that we were. And then at left tackle, maybe the next most important position on the offensive side of the ball, true freshman making his first start. And then you have nobody to call plays on either side of the ball on top of all of that. So I'm not a guy who wants like low level bowl games eliminated. I like that there's a postseason for 8-4 and 6-6 teams, but I don't take like major long term big picture state of the program kind of takeaways from what is essentially like the group that we ran out there as starters in this game would have been like running with the 2s and 3s in spring ball, 8 months ago. And again, we've got people calling plays that have never done it before in their lives. It's not even the case that like you have co-offensive coordinators and one of them leaves, and so the other guy calls plays. Like it was kind of a crapshoot. So I wanted to win the game. I think you showed up to compete and play to win the game. All that. I'm not saying that it doesn't matter, but in terms of like my takeaways, I'm not drawing anything beyond kind of just examining the game for what it was. I really think that the final score and uh, like the reality of the game, like I saw the stats of war, net EPA per play kind of thing, and like you were actually better than Arkansas by a not totally insignificant margin, but like by a margin that you would probably usually win with. It's just like your bad plays were so bad that it was too much to overcome, even though I don't know, you could limit it to like 5 or 6 that completely changed the game. Um, I think that our offense could have kept pace with theirs. There were 2 4th-and-1s that we decided to punt. There was a 4th-and-1 we were about to go for it in the red zone and we false started, so we settled for 3 instead of 7. I feel like for the most part, other than the 2 interceptions, which were kind of forced as you were trailing, you were doing just fine moving the ball. And like Jacoby Williams' numbers show that, Cam Dickey's numbers show that. I don't think Will Hammond, despite a couple of freshman mistakes, looked like out of his element or, um, anything like that. I think it just got away from you because of how drastically terrible your bad plays were. And I referenced a few of them already. The 2 picks, I think we got the 4th-and-1 calls wrong. The refs missed a safety that they didn't even look at. To me, it was pretty obvious. A fumble falls into your lap that you don't recover. One of your only really good defensive possessions, the only turnover you forced all game, you follow that up with a 4-and-out. And then poor Macho Stevenson is responsible for like 185 yards and 3 touchdowns all by himself. He played. People aren't going to believe this. And I saw a poster on Red Raider Sports. They're like, I don't know why they kept him in the game so long. He played 8 defensive snaps on Wednesday or Friday, whenever that game was. I have no idea what day it is. He played 8 snaps. They were loud, like you noticed when he was out there in all the wrong ways. But it's not like they stuck with him until the middle of the 3rd quarter. It was 3 possessions. Arkansas scored on all 3 of them. It took him 9 total plays. Only reason it didn't take him 8 is because you pushed a guy out at the 1, and so they had to punch it in from the goal line. Um, I forget the numbers. I think we were giving up like 32 yards per play on those 8 plays, which is so far from a normal number. Like if you have a bad defense, you might give up like 9 yards per play. And that's like atrocious. So 32 is mind-numbingly bad. Then after that, it's kind of other than that, Miss Lincoln help us to play, but after those 8 plays, you give up like 5 yards per play, which is totally normal. You can win games doing that. But again, you can't give up a 94-yard touchdown, a 76-yard down to the 1-yard line, and everything else we gave up and survive it without playing perfectly on offense, and we didn't do that. So those are kind of my main takeaways. A lot of it too is nothing new that we didn't know already from the first 12 games. Really bad at getting pressure on the quarterback, containing the quarterback. I mean, he extended so many plays with his feet. And besides that, I mean, there's just, in my opinion, not a whole lot more to say. Like your deficiencies that we knew were there all year were still present. And then some things that you used to be good at probably got worse because you're playing without both coordinators, QB1, RB1, wide receiver one, and everybody else that was missing. So I think it was, again, probably the teams should have been more competitive than the final score indicated. It's just your bad plays were atrocious and way too much to overcome in the end.
I agree with you in terms of no like long-term holistic implications. But one thing that really did stick out to me, and I think you made a good point of like it might sound like cope after the fact to be like, okay, no QB1, no running back one, no wide receiver one. Obviously, a ton of other losses across the board. But something that really stuck out to me in that game was accounting for the fact that both teams had a lot of inactives, a lot of people on the sidelines, a lot of talent missing. Something that really stuck out to me was just the amount of depth that Arkansas has and the fact that yours is not competing with that right now. I think that there's certainly like a level of SEC chest beating that I think is really gross and annoying, but their second, 2 deep, 3 deep players that they had to trot out in that game were bigger and faster and stronger than yours were. And I think right now you've got a lot of good young talent, but you're still very, very young and very, very small, especially defensively. And so I think that was maybe one thing that stuck out to me was, bringing in as much as you have from the portal will really hopefully, keep that young talent in a position where they can continue to be developed both physically and obviously on the field without having to be in a position where they're playing in huge roles where the game really depends on their performance.
Yeah, and I'll get ahead of some accusations because people might say like, "Well, you're just saying the same things that SEC fan base say after they lose a bowl game, like the 22 Texas Bowl to Ole Miss." Well, the difference is like they had Lane Kiffin, who was their primary play caller, Jackson Dart, Quinshawn Judkins, Zach Evans. They had a third or fourth round pass rusher who played that game. All those guys were playing. Like it would have been different, and the win and the loss is the same. The score is the score, no matter who plays or doesn't, and it's the nature of the game. Whether fortunately or unfortunately that guys opt out and transfer, um, I think it is kind of dependent on the context of each individual game. But yeah, you're right. I mean, like there were some young guys, some backups that flashed. I think like Cofield and Rigsby both looked good in moments on the interior defensive line. But clearly I don't know. I guess Macho is what your third, fourth corner when everybody's healthy and playing. Clearly, he was not up to the task. Now Jordan Sanford goes in, plays the next 60 snaps, gives up one completion that was completed 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage, and that's it. And so he doesn't look like a liability out there to me. But yeah, like I think Baskerville gets hurt. Obviously, we'll maybe discuss that more later. And this is not a shot at the young man, but a guy who was a triple option quarterback in high school is like next man up at safety. And most successful Power Four programs, that's probably not the case. Like they probably have another 3-star safety behind their starting safety. That is just kind of the nature of the depth right now, like you said, and hopefully you address a lot of that by bringing in the volume and caliber of players that we think we're bringing in this year's portal class. But it was obvious, like even with the caveat that okay, a lot of 2s and 3s are in the game right now. Their 2s and 3s, for the most part, were better than your 2s and 3s.
This might be weird to say, but I'm actually more excited about next year after this bowl game. Not necessarily than I would have been if you had performed well or won. Um, but I think there were some obvious, you know, standouts. I think Caleb Douglas performed in a way that you're excited for him to be wide receiver one next year. I think he provides an opportunity to have a go-to wide receiver that Josh Kelly did. I think he's good down the field. I think he's good intermediate. I'm really excited about that matchup with Leftwich offense. Um, uh, People are saying, well, you lost because Taj Brooks didn't play. Well, your two running backs ran for 199 yards and 30 carries. And one of them had a home run breakaway 54-yard touchdown right up the middle that Taj Brooks probably gets caught 30 yards down the field and then runs two more plays to get the touchdown. So I think Jacoby Williams provides a real spark. I think Joyner coming in provides a real spark. I think Cam Dickey provides a real spark. I'm very excited about those three players next year. Two of them playing in the bowl game. I thought Jacob Ponton played well. I would like to see more of those young offensive linemen get an opportunity. I don't think they got enough opportunity this year. And then defensively, I think you kind of proved why you needed four corners out of the portal. Like, obviously. But Tim DeRuyter's defense, which was, moderately good the first two seasons and bad this year, over and over gave up big plays. You go back to that Texas game you won in Lubbock. There were blown coverages, blown assignments. You win that game in regulation without those big plays. Go to the Kansas State game the same year. You win that game probably, or at least it's much closer in the fourth quarter if you don't give up the big plays. And so over and over, in every game you look to where the defense had a moment or whatever else, it's those big plays. Well, what does Shieldwood do? What does his defense do? It limits big plays. So I think just for whatever you want to say about the game, you can. But I think looking toward the future, Williams, Dickey, Douglas, some of these defenders, the transfer portal class, Shieldwood, I think you're in a really good position to be better next season. Now, I don't think that's if all these things are true, then something's going to be better. I think all of those things are true and should provide, except for maybe the transfers coming in because those are hit or miss. But I think you're in a good position. You made some good hires and you have talent on the roster, and that proved some things during the bowl game, even with the loss.
Yeah, I want to continue on that conversation. Do you have Monday Night Football on?
Yes, the Lions just scored on their opening drive and hit the two-point conversion. It's 21-21.
Who scored?
I believe the tight end caught the touchdown, Laporta.
You got to be kidding me.
Patrick scored the two-point conversion. I think it was Laporta, though. 87. You
got to be kidding me.
Is that a fantasy issue for you?
Yeah, that's not good. Hang on, I'll be right back.
I think to kind of continue that point, I also thought Will Hammond, who, everyone is saying before the game, he's going to throw for 500 yards and he's going to be the quarterback of the future and Morton's going to transfer. Look, I thought he made some really good throws, and I'm excited about 2026, but I also think he proved that he needs some more seasoning, and hopefully he can play in some games next year and get more experience because you're blowing teams out, and you get even more experience for Will Hammond in those atmospheres, so he's not making his first start, second start, third start in 2026.
For sure. I think just having the opportunity one time to prepare for a game against a Power 4 opponent as the starter and then go out there and take every snap is pretty meaningful. And it's a low-stakes opportunity to get your first one. If it was like we're going to Ames, Iowa this year and you're making your first career start, that's a lot tougher, in my opinion. And yeah, I think it puts to bed. I get everybody being excited about his talent level and the glimpses we saw of him and some of the throws he made. But I think it puts to rest any kind of, had he gone out there and, 350 yards, 5 touchdowns, maybe that sparks some debate during the offseason. But I think as good as Morton was at taking care of the ball for the vast majority of the season, even with the surgery recovery in the spring. I think it puts to bed any kind of quarterback controversy. Um, I feel good about, like I said, both running backs. I think Ponton is probably going to be competing with. I'm just guessing here. I think I'm blanking on his name. I think the left tackle you brought in from North Carolina is probably your starting left tackle next year. And I'm guessing now that Zambrano probably goes inside to guard, and then Ponton and Jados are battling for right tackle. But if Ponton, first of all, I feel good if he won that position battle. If he gets beat out though, and he's your swing tackle, I think that's also a good sign. I mean, it was only one game, but you can tell A, that I think he's competent enough to be out there, but B, like his ceiling is a lot higher than some of the other guys that we've trotted out there over the last couple years, when it was really just kind of patchwork, plugging holes. Um, and then if you have Zambrano at guard, plus like Davion Carter might have eligibility left now, you return your starting center, Vinny Scurry comes back. I know people are sick of hanging their hat on G5 and FCS offensive line transfers. I don't know if you could just put them all in one bucket together and say, oh, all of these guys are G5 or FCS, so they're not going to be any good. Like Zambrano was a guy that's getting NFL draft hype coming into this season before he got hurt. Guy from North Carolina is obviously not an FCS transfer. So I don't know. I feel pretty good about the offensive line just based on numbers and caliber relative to where it's been the past few years. It was kind of a long wait to get here. And hopefully you have at least two guys, Ponton and Sheridan Wilson, that were high school recruits, have been developed in the system out there. Maybe others, punch up and win a spot in the starting five there. But I feel pretty good about your skill spots too. Like you're returning an experienced quarterback that was productive this year. His backup looks competent. I think you can have a three-headed monster at running back. The position I wish we had seen more of in the bowl game or individual was Kelby Valson. I think he's probably going to be in the rotation as like wide receiver 4 next year, maybe starting in the slot. And he didn't get a ton of opportunity really, and so that's one question mark I have. I think you've got three guys between Virgil, Aiken, and Douglas that they have skins on the wall in terms of producing at one of the outside spots, but slot receiver seems like a big question mark, and I was hoping to see something from Valson that put my mind at ease there, but they really, I think, only threw him once or twice all night.
I think your best option right now, and we can go more into the weeds when we talk end of season recap and general thoughts, would probably be to move Aiken inside and just kind of see how that goes at first, just because I think Virgil and Douglas are both such good vertical down the field threats. But again, that's a topic for the offseason. I agree. I think Caleb Douglas, I've talked about him at nauseum on this podcast, but really, really good game again. Had, I think, one drop in the game that was pretty rough, and that's kind of been his issue all year, is just being consistent, especially with his hands. But obviously had that insane offensive interception where he just somehow came down with the ball. That's the talent that he has, the length and athleticism that he possesses to be able to do that is really, really impressive. A guy that I don't think we've talked about yet, because Williams just feels like a layup to talk about. He was so good in this game. I think there's a lot of excitement around him. A guy we haven't talked about on the defensive end is John Curry, who I just think has played so well this year. Just plays with his hair on fire, flies across the field. I mean, if we're honest and we zoom out, I don't think Ben Roberts had the season that certainly I was expecting this year. And John Curry being the player that he was right off the bat certainly helped alleviate some of that. So that's another bright spot for me from the bowl game. And I'm stealing this from Chris Level on Locked On Texas Tech, but he pointed out the only position that, Tech didn't add to from the portal so far has been linebacker. And it feels really clear as to why that's been the case when you obviously have the returning production from J-Rod and Ben Roberts, but then you have John Curry as well, who certainly looks like a really, really bright spot right now.
Yeah, quick note on the inside linebackers. Ben Roberts I think the last 8 games, has graded out above 56 on PFF only one time. John Curry, in far fewer snaps in this sample size, but in his last 4 games of the season, graded out at 80 plus 3 times. So that is one that I think Roberts was pretty entrenched coming into this season, but based on how things went over the last month or two, I would guess that that's a somewhat open and fluid position battle this spring.
Debo Samuel just scored.
I pretty much only need updates from the Lions.
Okay.
Nobody cares. I know this. My fantasy score is now tied 162.9 to 162.9. I'm playing Goff and Laporta, so a touchdown pass to Laporta is like the worst thing that could happen to me.
Who do you have?
Jahmyr Gibbs.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll give you Gibbs and Goff, and that doesn't seem good for you there, Kyle.
I don't know. I needed going into the night Gibbs to be outscored by like 14 or fewer by the other two, and I was curious, so I ran the numbers. All 3 guys have played in 14 games this year, and in 8 of those 14, Gibbs was outscored by the other two by 14 or fewer. But each of the last 4 weeks, Goff and Laporta outscored Gibbs by more than 14. So I was in a really good spot at halftime. I was still up by 14, and then that touchdown drive from Hill was like exactly what I didn't need. So if I can get a Gibbs touchdown here, we're probably all right. Yeah. But if Goff throws another one, or if Laporta has another couple catches, I'm probably toast.
All right, back to the Liberty Bowl. I do have one thing I want to complain about, and it's not something I expected to complain about, really. But this thing that Joey's doing with allowing portaled players to play, I'm fine with if they're not committed elsewhere. If there's a guy who is committed to, let's say, Nevada and is playing in the game and taking snaps away at receiver from a young guy, or, I don't know, punt returner snaps from a young guy or from Koy Aiken, that just does not sit right with me, especially when 2 of the biggest special teams blunders of the game are him not catching a punt and then catching a punt at the 2, setting up a safety. It just baffles my mind that a guy like Jordan Brown was playing in the game, taking snaps, and not doing anything well, and still playing. Now, Koy Aiken, I think, fielded the last punt or the last 2 punts, so eventually he was benched. But that is a guy who's committed to Nevada to go sign and play at Nevada next year. I understand if you're trying to get one last week of tape, or you've earned the right to play in the bowl game because you're here this year, whatever else it is. But if you're committed elsewhere, your mind is not on this team. Your mind is to maybe highlight yourself, but it's not to compete and win the game for the team. It's to do well for yourself. So maybe that's true for all portal players. And I understand the merit of allowing a guy who is in the portal to play, because he's going to go tell guys at his next school, they really took care of me on the way out. If you want to go there, I think highly of them. It's going to end well. But to me, I don't know that those benefits outweigh the negatives of having a guy you obviously are processing play in the game.
I agree. The only exception I would make is like if it's a specialty kind of player. Like we didn't have a backup quarterback for this game. So Jake Strong being the emergency quarterback, I'm fine with that. Or like, hey, there's one guy on the team who can kick a field goal and he's in the portal. Like, that's fine. I'd rather do that than like have the tight end try to kick a field goal. But yeah, when the backup punt returner who you sub in after the other guy ruins a couple opportunities is a guy who's on the team next year. It's like, why is he not just catching punts in the first place? And I understand what Joey has said about it. They're like, oh, they earned the right because they were on the team in the regular season. The bowl game, to me, like, a big part of the appeal is to let guys like Jacoby Williams, Jacob Pont, and John Curry get the practice reps that lead up to the game and then the game reps, because those are guys that theoretically are going to have a bigger role next year. And like you said, Rob, somebody that is not committed to, like, a bowl game is so much about the future of the program. Somebody who's not committed to the future of the program doesn't need to be there, in my opinion. It's strange when a coach like is fired, but they're going to let him coach the bowl game. I don't know. Maybe there's some context or nuance there on a case by case basis. But yeah, it's like, I don't think a guy who's been in college for 4 years, like Jordan Brown, playing 20, 25 snaps and having more film of him doing cardio is going to change his prospects in the portal, especially if he's already signed somewhere. And even then, it's just the purpose of the bowl game is not to get other programs the benefit of having more film on their incoming guys. It's to get your own team better. And when you take away punt return reps from Coy Aiken in this instance, like, you are making yourself a little bit worse going forward, because those are reps that he didn't get the chance to have because you gave him to somebody that's not on the team next year. And then it's an especially bad look when the guys that are in the portal get the reps and then do terribly with them. It to me is very fair for fans to question, why is that guy out there instead of literally anybody else?
Yeah, why not have Kelby Velson return punts? Like, he had 3 weeks to rep before the bowl. I know it's hard to do that if you haven't been working on it all year, but surely he's worked on it. Surely he's been in there. I don't know. Somebody else could have went out there and caught punts. Laporta, 15 to 20 yard catch, and Jahmyr Gibbs got hurt on the same play.
Oh, kill me.
He had an amazing pass block too. It was such a good pass block.
Is he like
I
hurt,
thought it
hurt,
was
like
a
he's
shoulder,
done
but
now?
maybe he just cut his cheek and he'll be back in soon.
Yeah, I think he's just getting some stitches.
Gosh.
Yeah.
The worst part about this, again, I know that nobody cares, is the one guy in our league who takes it too seriously is going to the championship, but his quarterback is Josh Allen, who's not going to play next week. So he's probably like a sitting duck. And anyway, that's going to really piss me off if I lose this game.
Sorry to say that, man.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm with you on portal players. I think that, look, if you want to recognize a guy for his contributions in the regular season, do that on senior night. To me, that's what senior day is for. And then the bowl game is for extra practice, momentum going into next year. And guys that have already said, I'm not going to be part of the program next year, don't really need to have a hand in that.
Agreed. Final thoughts on the Liberty Bowl.
Kind of sucked, mostly. And hopefully we're in a better bowl next year.
Agree with that. I was there. The press box was awful. It was just redesigned suites. Obviously not their long-term solution, but it's not great. Okay, that is our episode for YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you. Smash that like button, hit that subscribe button, move on from there. If you're listening on Republic of Football, thank you. We love you. We appreciate you. If you are visiting Lubbock anytime soon, you can go to visit Lubbock.org and find out everything you need to know about the city of Lubbock. If you're, in town for New Year's or First Friday there in January, you can look up what you need to do, where you can go for visit Lubbock.org. They can get you taken care of. It's a great city. Caleb Rogers announcing today he was going to the NFL draft. He said it's not just a city, it's the people, man. Matt Wells should have learned from Caleb Rogers there. Okay, if you want to listen to the rest of this episode, you can join us on Patreon, patreon.com/Gamblin Gauchos. We will be there. We'll have the Matador Transit mailbag. We'll also do a season recap. So join in the fun. You can also get the Discord perk from the Patreon, patreon.com/Gamblin Gauchos. We will see you there if you wish to join. We'll also talk probably some UCF basketball. So if you want some basketball talk, join the Patreon, patreon.com/Gamblin Gauchos and Patreon.